Dear Mr. Bolog, dear students of the Hungarian culture class, today I'm going to present my presentation on King István, or King Saint Stephen, the first king of Hungary, that is the first Christian monarch of the country. Saint István is his Hungarian name, Saint Stephen is an English name, Stephanus is the Hungarian name. When you search in a search engine for Saint Stephen, then you usually will find the martyr Saint Stephen, that is the first martyr one of the first martyrs of Christianity. And Saint István, of course, who is called Stephen in English, was named after this Christian martyr. He is, as I have already mentioned, the first Christian monarch of the country after a series of so-called fejedelmek, who were principles of a principality established around 896 AD. On the first page of my presentation, you can see a picture, a photograph of a small part of a chasuble, which is a cloak worn by a priest usually, and later on also by monarchs during coronation ceremonies. And it shows Stephen holding a scepter or a lance of some kind and a round orb in his left hand. This chasuble might have been made by a person who lived during Saint Stephen's time, so in the 11th century AD, Anno Domini, that is Common Era, or after the birth of Christ. And this is just a part of this cloak which shows Saint Stephen himself with a crown that is not identical to what is called the Holy Crown today. It is a different medieval crown that was made originally for another nation. Of course, there's a lot of artistic license and liberty when it comes to the depiction of people, especially also in the Middle Ages, because they are theocentric. But we can definitely say that this is a depiction of Saint Stephen, first king of Hungary. This chasuble was made during the 11th century, and it might have been made even by Stephen's wife, or it is possible that Stephen's wife, Gisela or Gisela, could have made a few stitches within this cloak. The cloak possibly could have been sent to a priest who was in Székesfehérvár, but later on this cloak was used as a part of official royal coronation ceremonies in Hungary. So this very cloak with this image of Saint Stephen, the first king of Hungary. All right, the structure of my presentation can be summarized thusly. I shall first discuss some basic information on Saint Stephen. That is, when he was born, when he died, what he was called, and what roles he had politically. Then I shall present some pieces of information on the territorial history of Hungary, because the Kingdom of Hungary, and we know that Saint Stephen was the first king of Hungary. The Kingdom of Hungary had a very important role in Hungarian history, and the reason why it was established and what it meant historically in its historical context is very significant for Hungarian identity, and also, of course, for the biography of Saint Stephen. So after a short summary of territorial history, highlighting the Kingdom of Hungary, I will go on to present a longer biography of Saint Stephen. I shall also talk about the Holy Crown of Hungary, what it means, and the object that is called the Holy Crown today. I shall also discuss aspects of religion and faith in medieval Hungary. And I shall also talk about documents that were written during Stephen's lifetime, possibly also co-authored or authored completely by Saint Stephen I. And I will also discuss Stephen's reception during the Middle Ages, but also later on. I shall also discuss, I shall present or show a list of my sources at the very end of my presentation. Sources I used for research, but also sources I used to get access to images, depictions in the Illuminated Chronicle or elsewhere, other more modern depictions of Stephen. So let's start with some basic information on Saint Stephen. Stephen's Christian name is Stephanus. He was baptized under this name in medieval Hungary. That is also his regnal name. His full regnal name would be Stephanus Primus Rex Hungariae, in the ecclesiastical pronunciation of Latin, which is the churches, today the Catholic Church's pronunciation of Latin, used for a very long time during the original, now so-called Tridentine rite of the Catholic Mass, that is the Holy Catholic service to God. Stephanus is a Greek word originally, Stephanos, which means wreath, like a Christmas wreath on a door, or crown, because people used to wear a holy crown when they triumphed in ancient Rome as a crown, and because of Julius Caesar and him being depicted with a bunch of laurels in his hair, a laurel wreath that was painted gold. Crowns, of course, usually made of some sort of precious metal, are associated with wreaths, and so semantically speaking, crown and wreath, they are related in ancient Greek, and for that reason Stephanus means crown and wreath also. And of course this could be interpreted as somehow foreshadowing Stephen's destiny, his great destiny. He was destined for greatness because his name already means crown. He had a pagan name as well, because his father was originally a pagan. He came from a pagan Arpad dynasty. His father, Geza, was to a certain degree interested in Christianity, but he was still a pagan. Stephen's mother, on the other hand, Charlotte, was a Christian. She was completely convinced by Christianity, and she was raised and baptized according to Eastern traditions that later were called Orthodox after the Great Schism of 1054. So Voik, the pagan name of Stephen, actually means hero. Also kind of shows how he might have been destined for greatness. Geza was his father, as I've already mentioned. Geza was a fejedelem, a principal, so basically, in modern terms, head of state of the Hungarian principality. His mother was Charlotte, who was baptized according to the Eastern version of Christianity. Stephen himself had many children, but only some of their names are known. We know of Otto, his son, but we also know of another son who was called Emmerich, Imre in Hungarian. He was later declared a saint by the Pope, the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church, and Saint Emmerich died before Stephen deceased. So Stephen outlived all of his children. Saint Emmerich unfortunately died very tragically in 1031 AD during a hunting accident. So Stephen was born around 975 AD, Anno Domini, Common Era, after the birth of Christ, in Esztergom, which was one of the most important cities of the Principality of Hungary. Stephen died on the 15th of August 1038 AD, either in Esztergom or in Székesfehérvár. Now, Székesfehérvár was probably the most important city in Stephen's entire life. And he died in the Kingdom of Hungary because that had already been established by him, and he's buried in the Basilica of Székesfehérvár. Now, the basilica was something that he commissioned himself. This specific basilica, that is. The first sort of political position that Stephen had was Grand Prince from 997 until 1000 or 1001. Stephen was probably crowned king either on the 25th of December 1000 AD or on the 1st of January, so at the beginning of the year 1001 AD. And he ruled as king from that date onwards until his demise in 1038 Anno Domini. On this page you can see a reconstruction, as it were, of a signature that I found made by a Wikipedia user, but it's of course based on an actual document made of paper, I think. But it's a signature, a royal signature, either designed by a courtier or a scribe, but it might have been influenced also by Stephen himself. Here you see a couple of letters within this royal signature that appear in the Latin version of Stephen's name, his regnal name, that is. So you can see the big X, which stands for Rex, and you can see E, Stephanus, and S, because S appears a couple times, even the letter R. So there's a couple of letters in this royal signature that appear there because they were put there by a scribe, and they appear also in the full royal name that is the Latin name of Saint Stephen. Latin was, of course, the official language of the Kingdom of Hungary. You could argue that it was one of the official languages of the Kingdom of Hungary. Now, there were many different ethnic groups, of course, in the Kingdom of Hungary, but Latin was a formal language of the liturgy and of the state. And because Christianity was made the state religion in the year 1000 AD, Latin was a very, very important language. But of course, it was already widely spread, and even before Hungary became officially a Christian nation with a Christian state religion, Latin was widely used in Hungary by not just by people who were doing Christian missions or were monks, but also by people who wanted to record something for eternity, because Latin was, in a sense, the language that was spoken everywhere during that time, in which you could communicate with everybody who was educated in writing and reading, and who wrote codexes also. So it was a very useful language, and the idea of it being an official language was thus also rather useful for international dialogue, not just with the Vatican, but with lots of different states, Italy, Germany, that is the Holy Roman Empire, which was a confederation of different German states. All right, so let's move on to a short territorial history of the kingdom of not just the Kingdom of Hungary, but Hungary in general, as a whole. The Principality of Hungary was established around the year 896 or 895 AD, and it lasted until that very coronation date which I mentioned, that is until the 25th of December or the 1st of January, 1000, that is, or 1001 AD. Then the Kingdom of Hungary was established with that coronation, so in 1000 or 1001 AD, and the Kingdom of Hungary as a kingdom ruled by Christian Hungarian monarchs, or, well, also pagan Hungarian monarchs later on, people who did not like the heritage of Christianity that Stephen I had brought. But it was ruled by Hungarians until the year 1301. And in 1301, later on, it was also ruled by kings that were descended from the French House of Anjou. So it was ruled by French kings or kings of French descent from 1301 until 1526. And now what happened? Hungary was split into 3 territories. We all know of this because it's one of the most important parts of history for history classes. It was ruled by Austrians, it was ruled by Ottomans, and then there was an independent part of Hungary. So the Habsburg dynasty, Austrians, started ruling the northern part of Hungary in 1526, after the Hungarian-Ottoman wars had ended. And they ruled before the personal union until 1867, and then they continued ruling until the end of personal union, when the treaty of when first there was the Republic, the First Republic of Hungary, and then the Treaty of Trianon, and then we had then we had a kingdom with no king, but with Admiral Horthy. So the eastern part of Hungary remained free, as it were, but it continued to have diplomatic relations with Austrians, but also with the Ottomans, from 1526 until 1570, when it was later on conquered by its enemies. And Ottoman Hungary existed only from 1541 onwards until 1699 as a state. So in 1699 it was defeated by a coalition of different states and different generals, and it was Ottoman Hungary was, as it were, liberated from the Ottomans that were not so keen on spreading a religion that could not be very successful in Hungary, because people did not want to become Muslims. But the reason why the Ottoman sultans really wanted to conquer Hungary was because it had a lot of cities that they could tax. And taxes, of course, are necessary to sustain an empire. But as I've mentioned, Ottomans were defeated in 1699, and Austria-Hungary existed as a personal union from 1867 onward until 1918, which is the end of the First World War. Then the Hungarian Republic was established a year later, 1919 until 1920. Then came the Kingdom of Hungary, 1920 until 1946. And then there came 3 more republics, one that was heavily influenced by socialists and communists, but was sort of a democracy, was being infiltrated more and more by Soviets after the Russian Soviet army had liberated Hungary from Nazi occupation, and also, of course, destroyed a lot of Hungary very violently. But later on, in 1949, a Soviet-backed republic was established, which lasted until 1989, when Hungary transitioned to democracy with the first free elections in 1992. So the Third Republic, after the Kingdom of Hungary, ruled by Admiral Horthy, is the current Republic of Hungary, the current form of Hungary with a democratic constitution, but it still uses a symbol that we associate with King Stephen, which is the Holy Crown. It's part of the crest. The upper part of Hungary's crest is the object which is called the Holy Crown. But I will get into detail about that. That is the Holy Crown, which was used for most coronations, Christian coronations, that is. It's actually a Byzantine crown, not the crown worn by Saint Stephen. Saint Stephen never saw this crown in his entire life, but it is still called Saint Stephen's crown in honor of Saint Stephen, because he was the first Christian king, and thus he made an important move to Christianize the country and to punish pagans also. So his legacy lasts until this day and can even be seen in symbols of the current Hungarian Republic. This is why the Kingdom of Hungary in Hungary's territorial history is so incredibly important. It's because it was the first state that Hungarians had, which was Christian. On the right, you can see a map of Europe, a part of Europe, with Hungary in colors, in two different colors. Now the darker color is the non-disputed area. The lighter color is Transylvania, which is disputed because another state claimed to be ruling over Transylvania as well. But this is generally the territory which was accepted today by historians as the territory which was ruled by Géza, that fejedelem that I just mentioned, that father of Saint Stephen, but it's also the territory that was ruled by Saint Stephen later on. All right, and now I shall delve into a longer biography of Saint Stephen. Saint Stephen, as we all know, was born 975 or around 975 AD. Because of different codexes, different legends, different biographies written by Christians, we don't really know the exact date. There are diverging sources, but we do know that Stephen married a scion, a descendant of the Ottonian dynasty of Bavaria. Now, Bavaria was part of a polity that's called the Holy Roman Empire, a territory that is much larger than today's Germany, which also had a monarch, a Christian monarch that is, but it was not a state like Hungary, like the Kingdom of Hungary. Rather, it consisted of smaller duchies mostly. So we had the scion of the Ottonian dynasty of the Duchy of Bavaria. So Gisela is the English pronunciation, Gisela is the Hungarian pronunciation, Gisela is the German pronunciation of her name. She obviously spoke German. I don't know which language she spoke with her husband, because her husband spoke Hungarian, but probably Latin also, because he was educated and a monarch. So they could have possibly spoken Latin with each other. Anyhow, this was a marriage that was arranged by Géza, the father of István. However, it's very possible that, in fact, I consider it probable that he got on with his wife very well, that he had a very good relationship with his wife, possibly also a good romantic relationship with his wife. And this move made by Géza to marry his child in 996 to Gisela of Bavaria was a very clever move, because in this way he could connect a Christian duchy with the Kingdom of Hungary. Bavaria and Hungarians hadn't necessarily been on best terms previously. In fact, there had been invasions of Bavaria beforehand, and now making an alliance with the duchy through this arranged marriage was very clever indeed, because Géza could thus create peace between Hungary and Bavaria. Now, Géza died in 997 AD. He was succeeded by his son Stephen. This was, in pagan days, when Stephen became a grand prince, something different for Hungarians. It was something that many of them were not used to, but they soon became used to this idea and liked it very much. The idea of the son succeeding the father was a practice in many Christian states, but it was not necessarily a practice that was practiced by pagan Hungarians. So the pagan Hungarians didn't accept this idea that the son of a principal would succeed him as grand prince, and later on maybe also as principal, or maybe as king. And so there was a pagan revolt, because many pagans believed that on the basis of seniority they had the right to accede to the throne, and even the right to marry the deceased leader's wife. So there was a revolt of pagan nobility in the late 10th century. And this revolt was headed by Koppány, a pagan, obviously, a nobleman who ruled a duchy that was not independent in any way, shape or form, but it was just basically a smaller region in an administrative sense, with a duke, Koppány being that duke, ruling over a territory in the southwestern part of Hungary. Of course, he still ruled under a king, under a monarch, or rather under a grand prince at this time. So the dukes were not independent. They were also subject to the king or to the principal during the principality. But they had a little bit of... they could exercise their own power in their own territory. Koppány believed that he had the right to rule all Hungarians. And so what he did is he started a revolt against Stephen. And he also believed that he had the right to marry Stephen's mother. That is the wife of the deceased principal. That is the wife of Géza. We know her name, Sarolt. So he wanted to marry Sarolt. This, of course, was not a very... Sarolt, being a Christian, was not okay with this. And so she decided to hide away in a castle at Veszprém. And Koppány decided to go to Veszprém and to conquer Veszprém. He believed he had the right to accede to the throne on the basis of a principle which is called the principle of seniority. He was Stephen's senior, thus he could accede to the throne. So these ideas of Koppány marrying the deceased leader's wife, Sarolt, and trying to marry Sarolt, and trying to accede to the throne because he was older than Stephen, these were pagan ideas, pagan customs. This shows that Koppány was a pagan, and that he attempted to follow these pagan customs. But the Christian ruler of the country, Stephen I, was the victor in this conflict, because this was only a short-lived revolt. But Stephen had to face a couple of difficulties when it came to defeating Koppány. So in order to defeat Koppány and all his pagan noblemen who were rebels and rebelling against the idea of a Christian grand prince and Christian king, Stephen gathered many knights, including many foreign knights, like Wetzelin, Knight Wetzelin. He employed these knights, so he hired them basically, so that they may fight in his army against the pagan, the ones who were in this pagan revolt against the Grand Prince. Knight Wetzelin, so this foreign knight, defeated Koppány, Stephen's enemy, at Veszprém in 997 or 998, accounts differ. Koppány was then chased back by Stephen's Hungarian army to his duchy. Then Stephen was crowned on the 25th of December 1000 or on the 1st of January 1001 AD, of course, Anno Domini, after the birth of Christ, as King of all Hungarians. Stephanus Primus Rex Hungariae became his full royal title. This was after the death of Koppány. So Koppány had been executed because he was a rebel, a pagan rebel who wanted to defeat Stephen, who wanted to claim the throne for himself, and he was thus killed as a punishment for his revolt. Pope Sylvester II, whom you can see on this page on the right, on the far right of this page, was not only a very gifted mathematician of the early 11th century, but also a pope, so the head of the Roman Catholic Church. And he also really liked Saint Stephen I. And thus he said, oh, we have got this crown right here. let's send it to Saint Stephen I of Hungary, and he sent it along with a papal letter. I will show that letter later on. This was originally made for another country, for another nation, but Pope Saint Sylvester II liked Stephen so much that he sent him the crown that had been already made for another king. He said, I've got this crown lying around here, what am I supposed to do with it? I'm just going to send it to Saint Stephen. Saint Stephen is known, Saint Stephen the King of Hungary, not the martyr. So Saint Stephen the King of Hungary is known to have been a big unifier of the Carpathian Basin, because the Carpathian Basin is traditionally the region that was ruled by the Magyars or Hungarians during the Middle Ages. The Koppány incident is an example of how Stephen acted during the Koppány incident, is an example of how he was such a good king and a good leader, because he could be an extremely good unifier. Not only did he spread Christianity, so he spread Christianity according to the mission of Christianity, but he also unified the country and brought peace to the country and was a stable ruler with a stable mind and a stable army, of course, that could defend itself against threats like Koppány, this rebel. And there was also a revolt of the Black Hungarians, where Stephen also defeated the rebels with his army and emerged as the victor. So here also we have examples of Stephen unifying the Carpathian Basin, defeating all those who did not recognize his authority. He also fought back against an invasion of the Holy Roman Empire, because Conrad II, the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, thought, well, I would like to conquer some territory, for whatever reason. And then he marched with lots of different German armies into Hungary, or toward Hungary, and Stephen defeated him. So he chased the armies back to where they came from, or rather he forced Conrad II's troops to withdraw from Hungarian territory in 1030 AD. So he also defeated this foreign threat, not just internal threats like Koppány or other pagans who weren't interested in Stephen being king or didn't like him, but he also defeated Christian enemies like Conrad II, who also did something very unintelligent, you could say, trying to start a war against somebody who was trying to be an ally of Bavaria. So the troops were withdrawn in 1030 AD, but unfortunately in 1031 AD, Saint Emmerich died, so one of the only two known children of Saint Stephen I, and he was, of course, he was in deep grief, and afterwards he faced a lot of problems due to this grief until he died in 1038 AD and outlived all of his children. Not all of the kings that succeeded Stephen, and they were kings according to the Christian ideas of Saint Stephen. However, they were not all of them convinced by the idea of Christianity. They did not necessarily recognize his important, or today considered as very, very important Christian ideas as something that they should continue to support. But in the end, Christianity became the most important religion of Hungary, and it is to this day the most important faith in Hungary, very clearly the most important and influential religion. And also it is important not just to the current government, but also to the republic in general. So the constitution is also heavily influenced by Christian ideas in Hungary. So Stephen's heritage is very impressive. He managed to unify the Carpathian Basin. He managed to defend Hungary against threats on the inside, but also against external threats. And he was able to uphold Christianity, which then remained as the dominant religion of this territory and also the dominant religion of Hungary. So it is thanks to Saint Stephen that that many Hungarians are now Christians. There's another photograph on this page of my presentation, which shows Saint Stephen astride on a horse. The horse is looking down. Saint Stephen is looking at what's right in front of himself, and he's on top of a pedestal. This is a very famous structure, a sculpture, a modern sculpture, which stands in Budapest, Hungary's capital. As you will have noticed, I've already mentioned the Holy Crown a couple of times. What do I mean by the Holy Crown of Saint Stephen? Now, on this page of my presentation, you can see a photograph with a black background of a golden crown. But this crown was made in the 1070s AD, Anno Domini, after the birth of Christ, during the early Middle Ages, by the Byzantine Empire. And it was made for Hungarians, but it was never worn nor seen by Saint Stephen, the first king of Hungary, because we will remember that he died in 1038 AD. So a few decades before this specific crown was made. And yet, even though Stephen never saw this crown his entire life and didn't commission it, this crown is known as Saint Stephen's Holy Crown. Now, it is named Saint Stephen's Crown in honor of this Hungarian king. But as I've mentioned, he never knew anything about it, at least during his earthly lifetime. But what's the story behind the Holy Crown, and why is this specific Byzantine crown, which was used to crown Hungarian kings, that is also the monarchs of Austria that ruled over Hungary, why is this associated with Stephen, and why was it named in honor of King Stephen? Well, there's a story about this. We have already heard that in 1031 AD, Stephen was struck by intense grief because he had lost his son, Saint Emmerich, in a tragic hunting accident. So he had lost his son Imre, that's the Hungarian name of his son, his heir, for whom he had had such great hopes. He had hoped that he would be his successor, a Christian successor who would carry on his legacy. But alas, it was not to be. And so, as he sank into grief, he also prayed a lot. And he prayed for the intercession of a saint. This saint is the Virgin Mary. So Virgin Mary is one of the most significant and well-known saints, especially in Western and Eastern Christianity, in the more traditional forms of Christianity, that is. And the Virgin Mary is not only known in Catholicism as a virgin, so as a person who gave birth to Christ because she had received the Holy Spirit, and not because this was a child conceived by her and her husband, but it was the child, Jesus, was born because of the action of the Holy Spirit. So that's why she's a virgin, because her child Jesus is not in any way the literal son of Joseph, Mary's husband. And there's also another important dogma, so teaching, with regard to Mary, that she was untouched by any blemish of sin, mortal sin or hereditary sin in any way. Hereditary sin or original sin being the sin that Adam and Eve got in the Bible when they took the forbidden fruit of the knowledge of good and evil in the Garden Eden. So in the book Genesis, the first book of the Bible, humanity becomes sinful. And there's, according to Catholicism, there's this one, Jesus, of course, is a person who doesn't have any sin, but in Catholicism there's also another person who is without sin, and that's his mother, Mary. So she's in heaven, of course, according to Catholicism, when Stephen prays for her intercession, which means that he asks the Virgin Mary to pray to God for Stephen and for Hungary. And he does something extraordinary. King Stephen offers his holy crown, which is different from this crown, because it's not that crown, to the Virgin Mary, and asks her to accept his holy royal crown. But this crown is actually a metaphor, because it doesn't really matter which crown it really is. The crown is a metaphor for royal power. So Stephen offers the Virgin Mary the power to rule all Magyars, all Hungarians. And so according to Catholic tradition, Mary is the one who has been not only the Queen of the heavens, but also the Queen of Hungary, ever since Saint Stephen prayed that she pray to God for him and for Hungarians, ever since Stephen offered her the Holy Crown. And the Holy Crown is the symbol, the idea that is the metaphor for the royal power, as I've said, the authority to rule Hungary. And it is holy because Stephen offered this power, this royal power, to the Virgin Saint Mary, because she is holy as well. And now the authority to rule Hungary is also holy. And so the crown, as it were, the monarch is also holy because Mary is the real monarch. There were many successors of Saint Stephen who were not Christians, who were pagans. They did not carry on his Christian legacy. And so during their reign, it would be Mary, the Queen of the Heavens, who would be the Queen of Hungary. And even today, according to Catholicism, Mary is, in a way, the Queen of Hungary, even though there is no monarch on earth. And this is the crown that's associated with Saint Stephen's prayer to Mary, and is named the Holy Crown of Saint Stephen in honor of Stephen because he offered all royal power to the Virgin. He knew he would die, and perhaps he also felt that some of his successors wouldn't like Christianity that much. So this crown is called holy because Queen Mary the Virgin Mary is the Queen of Hungary, according to this the outcome of this story. Keep in mind that this crown was never worn by Saint Stephen, though, but you can clearly see that it's a Byzantine crown, that's a Christian crown, because it has Jesus Christ sitting on a throne between two trees, and we also see the letters Chi and Sigma, short for Christos, which means the Anointed One, which is Jesus. And above that and below we have a bunch of gemstones and a cross that seems to be in a rather unusual position. People are uncertain why it looks that way. But it may be because of some sort of restoration effort gone wrong with regard to this crown. But it's iconic, and even this angle of the cross, even though it's rather unusual and looks very unusual, has become a symbol for Hungary, and is part of the Hungarian coat of arms. let's talk about a few works that are attributed to Saint Stephen. So Saint Stephen allegedly wrote a lot of books. Amongst them, there is the Libellus de Institutionemorum, which is translated as Admonitions to his son Emmerich. Now, we don't know if Stephen wrote this, but it is possible that he wrote parts of it or that he wrote the entire book. The literal translation of its Latin title is The Little Book on Teaching Good Manners. And we can see a photograph of a manuscript containing the admonitions, a medieval manuscript, of course, written in Latin because Latin was a very widely spread language. Then we also have the Decreta Regni Medievalis Hungariae, which is several books of law that have this title, literally called Decrees of the Medieval Kingdom of Hungary, authored possibly by Saint Stephen, but probably also by a bunch of legal scholars. At least that is what I would presume. Here we have a historical document also written in Latin, which was the official language of Hungary, but also of the Vatican, of course. And it was sent by Pope Sylvester II, who also sent the crown with this letter on the 27th of March, 1000 AD. So he sent it rather early. So when I think about it, the coronation might have been on the 25th of December, 1000 AD. So the crown and the letter, the papal, the allowance, the permission to be crowned as a Christian king, given by the Pope, was given way earlier, way before the coronation ceremony ever happened. Several months before the coronation happened. This letter, which allowed Stephen to become a Christian monarch, sent by the Pope, was sent in March of 1000 AD, and Stephen was crowned in December 1000 or in January 1001. So it says here in Latin, Sylvester Episcopus servus servorum Dei Stephanu Duci Hungariorum salutem et apostolicam benedictionem. So this is the ecclesiastical pronunciation of Latin, a pronunciation used by the Church, the Catholic Western Church, not necessarily just after 1054 AD, after the schism, but also before. And it says Sylvester, bishop. So the Bishop of Rome is called the Pope. Bishop being a person within the hierarchy of the church, and the highest bishop, the highest person in the Catholic hierarchy is the Pope. In this case, it's Pope Sylvester II. Writes to Stephen, King of the Hungarians, greets him and sends apostolic benediction. And then it goes on, we pray to omnipotent God, who has called you even from the womb of your mother to the kingdom and the crown, and who has commanded you to give you the crown. May he, post terreni regni molestias, in celesti regno corona adornet eterna. May he, after the troubles, I would say, of your earthly kingdom, adorn you in his heavenly kingdom with an eternal crown. So the translation that you can see on the page of my presentation is a little bit less literal, but this is a historical document, a letter sent by the Pope, which gave Stephen basically permission to become a Christian king, a formality. And it is also said that the Pope actually kneeled before Saint Stephen when he was crowned in 1000 AD or 1001 AD, and then placed the crown on his head. As I've mentioned, the crown was originally not even made for Stephen, it was made for another monarch of another nation. But the Pope happened to have this crown and sent it to Stephen because why not? If you already have a crown, let's use it. I shall also discuss aspects of religion and faith in medieval Hungary now. So I've mentioned that there are two big, two main ideas and religions in ancient Hungary. There is Christianity, which of course we know was followed by Stephen's mother, Sharold, but also by King Stephen himself. And of course there is paganism, Hungarian paganism. And these two existed simultaneously. It kind of led to conflict because even in the Old Testament of the Bible, which is of course originally an Israelite or Jewish collection of works, statues of pagan gods are destroyed. So conflict is kind of inherent between these two different religions because they do have some opposing views and even different views on morality. And so there are two different traditions with different customs. There are Christian customs and Hungarian pagan customs. So there's Hungarian Christianity in the form of some sort of Western, but also Eastern influences, because Hungary is between West and East at this point. And now Hungary, of course, is much more under the influence of Western ideas like Protestantism and the Catholic teachings. But in the Middle Ages, Eastern influence was still stronger than it is today. And paganism, of course, was also much, much stronger back in the day, in the Middle Ages, than today. And pagans like the nobleman Koppány wanted to preserve some sort of pagan tradition, some sort of pagan custom. And his rebellion, his revolt against Stephen, was not just motivated by political ideas and maybe even greed, but it was motivated also by his ideas of pagan customs. So paganism had also a political aspect. Those pagan noblemen who wanted to become king, or not king, but principal, who wanted to become a pagan principal of Hungary, were motivated also by ideas from their own religion. And at the same time, Christianity influences the history of literature in Hungary. And of course, politics in a big way, because Stephen becomes the first Christian monarch. He outlaws paganism and punishes pagans also in several ways. And at the same time, Christianity influences the evolution of Hungarian literature, which is mostly written in either in a sort of a runic script, rovásírás, or it is written in Latin. But the first sort of literature that we have in Hungarian is actually Christian. And it begins to appear during the Middle Ages. It's obviously monks who are composing new poems. For instance, the first poem to be found, written in Hungarian, is the Lamentations of Mary, a early medieval poem, the oldest Hungarian poem. In fact, the oldest Hungarian text ever to be found. So the first text found in Hungarian is a poetic text. And it's about the Virgin Mary holding Christ who has died in her arms. So we have this conflict between two different sets of ideas. And as they clash, Christianity emerges victorious in Europe, definitely. And also in other regions, of course, monotheism starts to prevail more and more in the Middle Ages. So Stephen has a huge legacy, especially for Christians, Catholics, but also Protestants in Hungary, for the Reformed Hungarian Church. Let's talk a little bit about his reception in the Middle Ages, during his lifetime, but also today. Now, Stephen was seen as a positive king, sort of a unifier of the Carpathian Basin, who unified Hungarians. Of course, unless you were a pagan, that is, because pagans some of them really loathed Stephen, but Christianity prevailed, and so obviously he was seen as a very positive king in the evolution of Hungary, because he brought about a sense of unity and political stability after he had defeated the pagan rebels. He was canonized as a saint by the Roman Catholic Church by Pope Gregorius the Seventh in 1083. So that was after Stephen had died, after the crown, the object which is known as the Holy Crown, was made by the Byzantine Empire. And Stephen was also, King Stephen that is, was also canonized much later in the Eastern Orthodox Church as a saint. His wife, Gisela, was beatified, so it means she's beata, she's happy forever in heaven, that she was declared as beata by the Pope later on. And there were efforts to canonize her as a saint, but those haven't been successful so far. As I've mentioned, Stephen is seen as a figure of political stability, as a person who brought about positive change and strengthened a Christian legacy that lasts until this very day. That's why you can see him on the 10,000 forint bill, which isn't much. That's 25 euros or 25 US dollars, roughly. But these bills obviously are used quite often in Hungary. 25 euros is a sum you can just spend every now and then. So Hungarians see his image all the time when they go shopping and pay with a bill. Not just this, but also I dare to say that Stephen has remained present in the Hungarian mind, and not just in Hungarian faith in Christianity, but also in Hungarian identity. So who Hungarians are, that's also defined by this medieval king, because he's seen as the most important and influential king, because he brought stability and he brought a religion with which he could connect Hungary in lasting alliances with duchies like Bavaria, and could really establish Hungary as a stable kingdom for the Middle Ages that wouldn't fall apart because pagans were fighting amongst each other. Stephen has a feast day in the Catholic Church. This is a national celebration in Hungary. It's called State Foundation Day, and it happens on the 20th of August, which is one of the most important days in the Hungarian calendar. I thank you very, very much for listening to me so far. You'll see a list of my sources I used for research on this page of my presentation. These are internet sources and also a few books from which I found a few quotes online. And Stephen's birth is depicted over here, actually. Rather, I think it's his baptism that is depicted in the Illuminated Chronicle, which is an illustrated Hungarian chronicle, so a historical work written in order to preserve Hungarian history. And you can see a lot of colorful illustrations whose colors have remained to this very day, showing several events during Stephen's life in the Illuminated Chronicle. And you may find images from the Illuminated Chronicle depicting Saint Stephen on the internet as well. Here is a list of images and their sources, also found online for this presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you've learned a little bit, even though you already know quite a lot about Saint Stephen because of this course. And I hope you'll remember this king as
one of the most important figures of medieval history. Thank you very much.